it works very, very well. So the thing, I do like the muted ones in the background, so it kind of stands forward. This is a subject that would, I think, be really a good image for corporate art, you know, to hang on the wall of an office or something like that. It's quite unusual, but I think the concept, you know, works very well for that type of thing. The tonalities of the birch trees works real well too. So I like the thing that they've taken the images here off the edge of the other background image, and then also use the little drop shadow in there to create kind of a very three-dimensional aspect to it. So I think that part works well. I'm gonna give this 3 for composition, 4 for impact, and 4 for technique.
Birch abstract by Steve Whitaker, 11 points. Botanical tulip.
Botanical? Okay,
Yeah,
the flower part of this works pretty well. The one thing I would do on that one is go into it and take these little flaws that are resting on the petal and maybe even retouch up this little petal down here in the lower right. I do like the pollen on there. That works out pretty well. But the main thing that I find really distracting is the background. I mean, you have a fairly bright area here that can be toned down, darkened maybe 20, 30%, this area. And then I find this one probably the most distracting of all these kind of out of focus purple images. So these could be darkened. And I think the whole background could be taken down 10 to 20%. And probably even this one petal be darkened up a little bit to match the other petals. Because even though it's, you know, facing the direction of the sun more, it is kind of distracting. And then you have this bright spot down here. And your eye usually goes to a brighter spot. So when we're doing photography, especially of nature, if you can't frame it in such a way to eliminate bright spots, don't be afraid to go into it and do that. And also, one thing that I find, I'm going to make this kind of disclaimer for the whole thing. When you're working with different kinds of shallow depths of field and you want to do different things, I commonly will shoot at least 3 images of that same shot at different f-stops and shutter speed combinations so that I do have a selection of different amounts of diffusion in the background. This is bokeh, or the old-fashioned depth of field. That's really critical in these kind of shots. So composition 3, impact 3, and technique 3.
Hey, Roger,
Yes.
if I can interrupt for just a moment? When you
Sure.
say this area or that area, you're probably moving your mouse around, but we can't see that.
Oh, okay, I'll
So
describe
you
it.
might like to say, you know, like the bright area on the top left or the left pedal, or, you know,
Okay.
you know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yes,
Okay.
I will do that.
That would help so we know what you're looking at.
Okay. So the flower there, the upper left petal is way too bright. I bring it down to match the other petals more. And the purple splotches and the other green stems, I bring the
That right down
tonality
there.
down. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, next one.
Oh, wait a minute. Botanical tulip by Rosemary Bizarre, 9 points. Chateau Fontenot. I don't have the full title. Go ahead.
Okay, I find it an interesting building just because it has so many turrets and steeples and dormers, and it's really, and then you have the color combination of the yellow and the red brick and then the copper roof there. The main problem I think this one has is in the upper left-hand corner, you have several blemishes there where probably your lens was just not clean. Probably had raindrops or something on it earlier and hadn't cleaned that up. So be real careful, because I know I had something on one of my lenses that had a flaw like that. And I just had to remember where it was and place it on an area that it wouldn't show. And I did that, but this one, it has, 4 or 5 different spots. The cloud detail is nice. The foreground foliage is nice. It has a feeling of great depth because you have the 2 buildings or 3 buildings and the foreground foliage. And even the sky with the clouds in it adds interest. So I'll give this 4 for composition and 4 for depth of field, and 4 for technique.
Chateau Fontenot by Dorothy Detler, 12 points. Common Merganser.
Okay, this recalls a competition I entered years ago with birds, and anyway, it was wild birds, except I had this one shot of a mallard male, and he had a water droplet dropping off his beak, and the sun highlighted it. So if you can get that little starburst effect by shooting at f/16, that is really nice. I also like the highlights on the bill, and the eye highlights too work really well. Probably the only thing I would do differently is these little white spots in the lower left and above the head of the merganser, is I would take those down just a little bit so that they're not as distracting. And maybe place the bird 5 or 10% further to the left so that his tail is not so close to the edge. We really want to avoid any kind of edge mergers if we can avoid it. And the bird being kind of long and narrow, so to speak, I think would easily come an inch to the left and still be, as long as you had more space in front of his face, so they're swimming into the area, that works really well.
Scores?
So the composition, I'm going to go 4, the impact 5, and the technique 5.
Common Merganser by Steve Shining, 14 points. Net Fisherman.
Okay, I find the composition on this one pretty well. And I even like the fact that he's got the one leg raised there, and the shoe is able to differentiate from the shorts, and that's good. The placement of the horizon line is level and in the right place. And even though the distant water kind of goes out of focus off, I don't find that objectionable because the mid-ground water is pretty tack sharp. The only difference is the skin texture of his back and his legs looks like it could be softened up a little bit, or some way to more blur it together, and so it doesn't have kind of a grainy look to it. Composition 5, impact 4, and technique 4.
All right, Net Fisherman by Judy Dobler.
Did you get the scores?
Yeah,
Okay,
Net Fisherman got 13 points.
okay.
Painted Hills, Oregon.
That looks familiar place in there. I think the striations on the rock is really what makes this one. And also I like the panorama format where you have a longer thin thing. So yeah, the subject lends itself well to that format. I might even exceed a little bit more because I don't find the gravel in the foreground inch really adds to the scene. And I always kind of believe that, you know, if something doesn't add to the scene, subtract it. And I think that even though that would be a longer image, that foreground gravel could be lost. And I might even go into the sky a little bit, because it's a very natural phenomenon where the sun's coming from the right. The sky is brighter and the clouds are lighter. And so I would kind of even up the sky a little bit and maybe even take the upper left sky a little bit darker so it has a gradation and tone and in color of it. And there's a few little spots, the base of the mountains in the center there, that are kind of bright spots. And I think I would go in and tone those down just a little bit so they're not quite as apparent. Overall, a really good image. So just, it's one area I've always wanted to go back down to Oregon and photograph that. Composition 5, impact 5, and technique 4.
Painted Hills, Oregon by John McLaughlin, 14 points. Parish Church, and I don't have the rest of it. Oh, that's Reykjavik.
Yeah, Iceland. It's interesting. I guess they built this multi-million-dollar church, and they don't really have religious ceremonies there anymore. It's usually rented out for rock concerts. So it's kind of interesting story behind that. Sky's nice, dramatic clouds, distance. It has almost kind of a feeling of a rocket about ready to blast off, you know, like the Challenger or something, kind of look to it. Nice texture. The only thing I'd probably go in on the right side of the, you know, the sunlit area there, I would go in and darken that maybe 10 or 20%, because that kind of pops out a little bit and it doesn't seem to have all the detail that it could have in it. The face of it works really well. It just the texture, it's real strong. And I don't know what the whites, but maybe the bushes in the foreground could be toned down a little bit too, so that your eye goes to the church itself. Very interesting architectural. And I like the fact that it looks like it's really straight. There's a little bit of a halo around the church, and I don't know if somebody had gone in and burned in the sky a little bit, but when you do that, you have to make sure you're real close on the thing to avoid a halo type thing showing up around the church. I'm sorry, I've lost my voice there a little bit. Composition, I think it's very straightforward and simple, but still a 5. Impact 4, and technique 4.
Parish Church, Reykjavik by Dorothy Detler, 13 points. Sunset at the Old, and I don't know the rest of the title.
Old Mill.
Okay.
The thing I admire most about this image is the warm, cool contrast. You have this very warm, large building, and then the smaller blue building that kind of contrasts that. And then you have the part on top of the big building that has a kind of a real reddish cast to where it's catching the sun. So I don't know if this is a real accurate color or if it's been enhanced some, but it is a real dramatic color and very tightly framed. And I even think the railroad tracks in the foreground add to it a little bit, giving you some additional depth to it. the 3/4 view of the building gives that feeling of depth really well. Maybe would have gone into the 3 upper windows on that and darken them up just a little bit. They seem to be a little bright. You do want them lighter, but because the rest of the buildings, the windows are darker, I think I would, not go that dark, but just a hair darker. Really dramatic sky. And I don't know if that's totally natural, but it works because I know I've had some images that I've shot and people would say, you really bumped up the saturation way too much. And in that case, it was totally natural as the scene was. And sometimes you can get that type of thing when you have lighting, it's really dramatic. So composition 4, impact 5, technique 4.
Sunset at the Old Mill by Don Burnell, 13 points. All right, so we have 1 digital monochrome, general.
Yeah.
One room school.
This image is really kind of dramatic lighting, really stark lighting shining on it. So you have real distinct shadows. Stuff. I would probably go in and retouch them a little bit. It seems like the tree on the left, there's one branch that's quite a bit lighter. Maybe that was a dead branch or something. I don't know, but I would tone that down so that it's blends with the rest of the tree pretty well. And then the paint that's been repainted or partially painted or something is a little bit distracting, but that would be pretty hard to go in and repaint the building photographically. There's also a line in the upper left, in the corner up there. There's some kind of, I don't know what happened. And there's a line up on the right too. I don't know if the person was shooting through something or anyway, I would blend that edge out. So when you're burning in an area, you don't want it, to be real distinct at that edge. So composition, I go for technique, impact 3, technique 3.
One room school by Don Burnell, 10 points. All right, on to subject color. Be productive.
Yeah, I think the hairs on the bee work pretty well. I like that detail. And those hairs really create kind of an interesting thing because they generate an attractive electrical charge. And they actually kind of suck the pollen right onto the body of the bee so they can carry it to the next flower. So that works pretty well. But the one thing that I find this is the wings being soft focus, I would prefer to have maybe close down one stop more just to bring that into. Also, the flower is a pretty strong element in your image, and the small unopened bud is competing quite a bit with the bee. So I would either eliminate the flower or severely darken it so that it didn't stand out, because you have quite a bit going on with the foreground flower. And this would be a good one with the shallow depth of field, but you have to watch those that you have what you need to have in focus. So again, revert back to what I said is don't be afraid to shoot more than one image of the same subject, just so you have greater depth of field to choose from. Because sometimes you don't know exactly how much you're going to have when you're looking at a small image in a viewfinder. So this one, composition 3, impact 3, and technique 3.
Be Productive by Kim Barbie, 9 points. Busy.
This one I find much more exciting and interesting, and I think it's partly just the color scheme that you have this deep fuchsia and then the yellow of the pollen covered anthers and pistils, and then the bees hairs on it work pretty well. I maybe check the focus a little bit more on the top part of the bee, and those lighter spots, I darken them down just 10 or 20% because they do jump out there. The composition of the flower in the frame, I think, works really well. Just this one, I think, is a much stronger image than the previous one, just because of the side view. And also just even seeing the bee's eye, I think that's kind of nice when you're shooting people or animals to include the eye. And it might even be nice to go into the eye there and strengthen that highlight on the eye a little bit. This one I find one of the strongest images. So composition 5, and impact 5, and 5 on technique 2.
Busy by Elaine Giordani, 15 points. Cat on a Stick.
This one I find kind of disturbing because I'm almost looking at that and thinking that the caterpillar in the center is a model and the background is actual. And I'm not sure that it kind of striking me as one where the other thing I find out about all this is this limited depth of field with the background out of focus. The background looks very cluttered to me, just because you have all these white spots jumping out there at you. So I would want to go down and darken that. The central caterpillar there works pretty well, but the tower or whatever it is in the background, that red, I was wondering if there's a way it could have been shot so that that was hidden behind one of the stacks on the computer, on the caterpillar. So in this one, the composition 3, impact 3, and technique 3.
Cat on a Stick by Tim McGee, 9 points. Dear Me.
Well, the deer is fairly good composition, but the tonality of the deer, the kind of muddiness of it, the flaws in its fur, whatever that is across its eye, and the background snow just jumps out there. It really, I don't think works very well, just because your eye goes to these 3 white spots first, and the deer is kind of lost in there. And the depth of field is, the deer's ears are not sharp, the eye is not sharp. There's not really any area that's tack sharp. And I usually like to have at least one area. So this one, I give it a composition 3, impact 2, and technique 2.
Dear Me by Sister Madonna Booter, 7 points. Egret Portrait.
It's kind of dramatic portrait. I do like the way that the texture of the feathers has been retained on the neck. I just would like to see maybe a little more depth of field on the top of his head and on the bottom part of his head there at the neck. Simple background with texture and detail in it. Really, I think works pretty well. It's a very simple stylized image, is very plain. And the eye works out really well, a luminescent highlight on it, and the detail on the beak work. So this one I'll give it a, or yeah, composition 4, and the impact 5, and technique 5.
Egret portrait by Steve Whitaker, 14 points. Getting ready to ride.
This was kind of an interesting one. I really like it because it has a lot of things going for it. I would have probably preferred a little more depth of field, so to bring out the texture of the hair. I assume that's because the title, that it is a horse hair in the background. And then I like that, you know, the distinct shadow and the way the shadow fills the frame there. And then this lower texture of the hair in the lower left, and then the bright colors of the saddle blanket up there, and the strong diagonal kind of matches the diagonal of the cowboy shadow. Just an unusual thing. Somebody was thinking outside of the box, and I like to see that type of thing. So it tells a story, and it was, I don't know if they just noticed this and shot it, or if they really composed it and set up all the details there, but it was a success. So to me, the image composition is spot on, 5, impact 5, and technique 5.
Getting Ready to Ride by Gene Alleman, 15 points. Gloriosa.
I like the diagonal of the petals coming into that part of the center of it. And I think the depth of field here works pretty well, even though it's this fairly shallow one. The texture and interest in the center part of the flower adds to it. And I really like that green background in the upper part, in the way that it's not a solid green, but it's got texture and shape to it. So that works really well. Find it really strong. So I go 4 on composition, and 5 on impact, and 4 and 5 on technique.
Gloriosa by Kim Barbie, 14 points. Greater yellow something.
Yellow-napped woodpecker.
Thank you.
Okay. The bird is spectacular. It's an unusual one I haven't seen before, and I'm assuming it's a foreign country. It's not a local bird. The texture of the tree trunk there works really well, and the way that the bird is probing its beak in the crack of that worked really well. But what it works with this is the bird and the branch, but the background just way too busy, especially the white spot behind the bird's back. That really jumps out at me. And the white spot in the upper right corner and the lower right corner. There's all these places are distracting to me, when I think this is a masterpiece if they went in and just darkened the background a little bit and toned it down and blurred it some, so that the bird stands out more and it's not being conflicted with the background, competing with the bird. Even the highlight in the bird's eye really works well. So the bird's pretty sharp. It's a little soft on some of the feathers on the back, but I don't find that too far out, but just the background is competing with it. So the birds and the composition is 5, but impact's 4 and technique is 3.
Greater Yellow Nap, I'm sorry, my titles are covered up. By Rosemary Desire, 12 points. Gray breasted, and I don't have the rest of the title.
Mountain toucan.
Okay,
And the toucan family, they're really interesting because they have such massive bills, and those are like hollow, so that they are very lightweight. So it looks like it would weigh the bird down. I like the simplicity of this one. The colors of the bird's feathers work well. Even the moss growing on the branch works well. And the background, I think, is ideal. I mean, it's been, this model is to show that it is in nature, but it's not competing with the bird, the highlight of the bird. Probably the only thing I would do is go in on the bird's upper bill, and I don't know if that's scratch or something else there, debris on his bill, but I would retouch his beak there a little bit. But composition, composition 5 and impact 5 and technique 5.
Gray Breasted Mountain Toucan by Harvey Brown, 15 points. Hello.
I like the title. I mean, the expression on the giraffe as it looks pretty sharp. I like the hair, wispy hairs on top of his head, and the hairs on the mane of his neck. They work pretty well. The background's fairly sufficiently out of focus that it's not competing. I just find it very, I do like the little bit of diagonal that the giraffe's neck has. In fact, I might even accentuate that a little bit more and just tilt them 5 degrees more to the left. The colors are interesting. I do think you could do a little something with the highlights in the eyes. It's nice that they have them, but sometimes the direction of the sun and stuff, you get the highlights kind of in the wrong spot. In this one, I think that it needs a more pronounced highlight, because that's good that it shows the shape of the eye with the crescent shaped highlights at the bottom. So composition 5, impact 5, and technique 5.
Hello, by Elaine Giordoni, 15 points. Ocellated turkey.
Never seen this critter before. I'm assuming it's a foreign variety. And I don't know if that's natural things on his head or is it some kind of tumor or growth or something. His feathers are spectacular on his neck, and the wrinkles on his head work pretty well. I like the highlight of the hairs there. I would have probably preferred just one more stop of depth of field, just to bring out all the feathers on top of his head sticking up there. The composition works really well where you have plenty of room around it for the bird. It's not too close to the edge. And that depth of field improvement could probably make the beak a little more distinct there too. But I think the strongest part of this is the neck feathers. Just interesting. Very interesting highlight of the sun. Maybe that one little highlight above the main one could have been retouched out. So composition 5, impact 5, and technique 4.
Okay, Ocellated Turkey by Donna Larson, 14 points. Raindrops keep falling on my head.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to me because I suspected when I first looked at that was rain, and because they're all parallel streaks and stuff. But I looked in vain kind of for water droplets on the branch. I didn't see any, but I believe that's the great gray owl. Just very dramatic and doesn't have any branches over the face of it. And the background branches kind of frame around it. And the ones that are in the top part of the frame are almost out of focus, which I like, with limiting it to the foreground. So just a really strong image. Even the little bit of pine needles or whatever they are in the left side of the branch work really well. I think the rain really adds to this too. And owls are always interesting to me with their expression. They look so curious and say there. And I guess there's a, I don't know if this is part of that group, but there was a reported incident that an owl out somewhere. And I think, 30 photographers converged on the owl. I'll go with the composition, be 5, impact 5, and technique 4.
Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head by Alice Garland, 14 points. Rusty Rollers.
Well, I like the rollers and the rust on them, but the background rollers and the white spots in the shallow depth of field back there give those a little too much prominence to me. I'd like to see the background rollers, if not darkened, at least taken maybe further out of focus. They're, to me, I find them a little too distracting. Maybe it could have been framed a little tighter or something. So I'll do composition will be 4, impact 3, and technique 3.
Rusty Rollers by Tamara McGee, 10 points. Spring Blossoms.
Well, I think what works here is, I think the square format really works with this image, with the framing of it. And I like the diagonal of the tree trunk, and kind of wonder if the little bit of the leaves that are peeking out on the upper right could have been eliminated.
Oh,
I'm finding that that green, it kind of distracts me. I like the flowers, I like the bark. That all works together real. And even the background tonalities and color work really well. So on this one, I'll go 4 on composition and 5 on impact and 4 on technique.
Spring Blossoms by Lori Pence, 13 points. Starling. Oh,
And a really neat colored starling, much prettier than the native ones around here. But even the ones around here do have that iridescent,
yeah.
and that's really spectacular. And you really have to watch the angle of the sun on any, because that's what they call structural color, meaning that it's not like pigment, but it's like miniature prisms that refract the light and send it back. So birds, some other, even fish and stuff will have that iridescence. And I think it's perfectly framed. I like the broken branch at the bottom. The modeled background is very natural background. I think this is a great bird shot. So I'm going to go 5, 5, 5.
Starling by Donna Larson, 15 points. 3 Blooms.
these work really well. I don't know if it's an apple blossom or what species, but it works nice as a little still life kind of gathered in there. And the texture and grain of the wood around it, I think really enhance it a lot. I would probably go in a little bit on the left side where the green leaves are, tone those down just a little more, and maybe the edge of that green leaf above the left flower. Works really strong. So I'm going to go composition 5, impact 5, and technique 4.
3 Blooms by Steve Shining, 14 points. Zebra Dove.
And this one too, I think, has a little bit of a problem with the depth of field. It's great to have the soft focus in the background, but I think some of these feathers in the breast of the bird there get a little bit lost. I'd like to have a little more detail. This bird is definitely probably, responding to the cold, and with his feathers all fluffed up. It's an interesting image. Nice composition, nice tight framing on the bird, nice modeled background. Greens work out real well, and the colors and the softness of the some of the feathers work out real well. But I would want to see a little more there in the breast and also on the top of the bird's head. So on composition, I would go 5, impact 4, and technique 4.
Zebra Dove by Judy Doppler, 13 points. Okay, we're going into subject monochrome. There are 4. Beignets at Cafe.
Dumont.
Okay, thanks.
This one, it kind of it bothers me. The only thing that really I think is real strong is the texture and detail on the spoon. I think that maybe it's too tightly framed, and if it was shot in such a way that you had more of light that's directional, that would be kind of modeling light to bring out the thing, because these the shallow depth of field, I think, kind of detracts from the image. I'd like to see a little more of it, because to me it doesn't look like appetizing or something like that. It's more like, the flour exploded all over the place, or there was powdered sugar or whatever. And so I think it just needs to back off just a little bit and have more directional light to model the subject. So composition 4, impact 4, and technique 3.
Beignets at Cafe Du Mont by Tamara McGee, 11 points. Channeling Jimmy.
I'm assuming it's Jimi Hendrix, or I'm not sure, but it looks like it. There's a lot of things that work really well about this. It's a very stark image. The contrast, darks and lights, really contrasty. The diagonal of the guitar, the diagonal of the microphone stand, the pose of the musician, and his tattoos. I think everything works well to say kind of, rock star type thing. There is a little bit of blurred motion on the forehead and face, and that's the only part that I find any fault with it at all. So composition, I think, would be 5, impact 5, and technique 4.
Channeling Jimmy by Tamara McGee, 14 points. Frozen fog.
This one, to me, I mean, the atmospheric conditions are interesting, but it doesn't really strike me as a strong composition. There's a lot of details there. I'm almost thinking that, you know, probably 3 or 4 images could be taken out of this and simplified and had stronger, and maybe even with a little lower viewpoint, so that the trees are, you know, silhouetted to get over the background out of focus trees. Just to me, kind of blurs all together. There's a strong line with the bank of the snow there, but any detail in the snow is lost. The gradation of grays that lead into the background, I think, created things. But I think the subject matter has a lot of potential, but I don't think the photographer should have probably should have stayed there another half hour and tried different angles and different compositions. So composition 3, impact 3, and technique 3.
Frozen fog. Madonna Booter, 9 points. Otis.
A great shot of the dog. Just the alertness and the interest the dog has. Maybe a little looser framing on the dog's ears at the top, but that, at least they're not cropped off or anything. The only thing I would suggest, other than maybe leaving a little more space, the top would be to go in on the right and left side of its kind of the main thing there, that where the white is and stuff, to darken the background a little bit so that it stood out a little more, because the contrast between the dark fur in the top of the dog and on the bottom worked really well. But the kind of out of focus spots of highlight in the background kind of bother me a little. I'd like to knock those down a little bit, burn them in a little bit so that they're not as obvious. Because the expression on the dog's face, the texture on his nose, I'd go in and burn in a little bit more texture on the right side of the nose. So I think a great dog shot. So composition 4, impact 5, technique 4.
Otis by Lori Pence, 13 points. That's it.
Actually, we have maybe one more. Tim, did you get the email from Cameron?
Let me look.
Apparently, Tim's father put it in the wrong category for next meeting, and if possible, he'd like to have Rodger judge it if you can find it.
Sure.
I've got another one. This is Harvey.
Oh,
I submitted an image.
the bird one?
Is
And
is
didn't
this
show
the
up.
one you want?
I don't see anything, Tim.
Pardon?
I saw a bird there.
Oh, you're not seeing it.
You
Okay.
have to take the judge's thing off your desktop.
Yeah. Stop share. There.
Okay, I see the bird shot on
I
the
don't see
upper
that
right.
one now. Just a sec. I gotta figure out how did I do that before.
What is that?
Close that. I need to close that, I think.
Active speaker, it'll show up.
While we're doing that.
Okay, I see it, but it's really small.
I'm not
There,
getting there.
got that one.
Okay,
There, you see it now.
yes, I see it. Great. Kind of interesting texture with just all the wood that's fallen off the front of the porch, I guess. I do like the old windmill in the background too. And I like that it's above the horizon. So that works out well. I would have probably liked to have taken 3 steps to the right a little bit and tied the windmill in a little closer to the architectural rack.
Is this the front of the building is down, right?
Nice texture, nice warm tones, good background. On this side, on the composition, I'd say it's 4, impact 4, and technique 4.
So this photograph by Tim McGee earned 12 points.
Time
Come
around.
around here.
Okay, yeah, I sent in an image, what is it, above the thorns? So it should have been in mono subject. Don't see it. I've got it here in front of me. I guess somebody's, I can't share the evidence. But it says on the website that it went into print. Oh, crap.
Oh, that's your problem. It went into print instead of digital.
Oh, great. Okay. There a workaround for this?
Why don't we just show it? We'll show it at print night.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we're going to do print. I have a number of things I need to say. First, let's thank Rodger for doing the judging. We appreciate it. He did a great job. So thank you, Rodger.
Thank you guys. I'm sorry because earlier today I checked through there and I thought everything worked. Yeah.
Well, I think it's just required for these Zoom meetings. It has to go like this. So I have several things I'd like to mention. One, to start with, next week is the deadline for digital upload for print night. And print night will be by Zoom again. And prints need to be delivered either down here to Cannon or to Rodger's office in the Garland district so that Rodger can judge the prints themselves. And then print night will be the 16th. So it's early this month. So be sure you note that because it's a 5 Wednesday month. So it's the 16th is print night.
So what's the address in Garland that I need to, is that for me or somebody?
Yeah, for you, that would be for you, Rodger, at your print shop.
You don't have a print shop.
Oh, okay.
But that's David Sam's.
Oh, yeah, I got the wrong person. Never mind. Sorry, Rodger.
I can go to David's, but
Yeah, if you can deliver them down to Cannon, 145 South Cannon, and
Okay.
right down by the Elk, and I'll get them to Rodger.
well, I could even come there and,
Yeah, you could judge them here, actually, if you want.
yeah.
If we've got the racks here, we can set them up here.
Yeah, that sounds better to me.
Give me a phone number so he can call you to set an appointment.
Mine is 509-939-3266. 509-939-3266.
Got it.
Okay.
And then April. So we're going to do digital night by Zoom. It'll be the 6th. But then on the 20th, we're going to meet in person. And so we're going to do kind of a year-end meeting on the 20th at the Moran Prairie Library. Right now, it's scheduled from 5:30 to 8:30, and tomorrow I'm going to see if I can change that to 4:30 to 8 o'clock. What we plan to do is have kind of a little bit of social hour. So for the people who can't get there at the beginning because it's a little earlier than normal, we'll have kind of a social hour. Then we're going to do print night and have the prints judged. And then we're going to do a potluck meal that day. So after the print night, we'll have a dinner there. And then if you have some prints that you like and you want to bring, I'm going to take every rack we have down there and we can any prints you just want to have, show off if you got things you like, let's bring them down and fill the place full of prints. And we'll have some door prizes as well. So it's in person on the 20th of April. Since we don't have salon this year, we're going to meet on the 20th. And then the other next thing is that if you have nominations for board members or president, please send them to me or to Dorothy, and then we'll vote on them at the April 20th meeting. And then our current plan for next year is to meet at the Unitarian Church in out near the Spokane Falls Community College. It's right behind the Mukagawa. That's the current plan. We'll see. There may be some issues with it, but we're hoping right now that's what we're going to do. Then I do have some prints still down here at Cannon from the last print night, actually from a couple of print nights. If anybody's missing some prints, they're probably here. And then finally, the website, where the schedule is to have a new upload system available in April. So I'll send some information out about it. You'll go to it exactly the same way you do right now, except it'll be a little bit more simplified. The categories will be a little clearer, the dates will be clearer, and then the print night and digital night will be a little more separated, which will help to avoid people putting things in the wrong categories. So hopefully, assuming that we meet our deadline, that will be available for the upload for the April meetings, both digital and the print night. So that's it from me. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Or anybody have any questions about any of the pictures?
Can
Like,
Tim, take this photo off? Yeah, there. Thank you.
That man that was talking.
is there anybody have any questions about any of the photos or anything?
Yeah, I'd be glad to answer any questions. I hope I explained everything well enough.
So Tim, thank you also. Thank you to Tim for stepping in and getting photos up for us. Now you're an expert, Tim.
This is Tim McGee. I just wanted to say thanks a lot for shoehorning that one of the homestead in there at the last minute. I got it in the wrong category. I put it in print or in print. So thank you for pushing that through. And I just wanted to tell you guys that caterpillar on the pole, it actually is, there's a cat dozer 120 feet up in the air on a pole. And
Oh my goodness.
John Lepper actually told me where it was, and I took that picture with my drone.
And we're out in the Palouse,
It's a full size one.
Western Palouse area,
It's a-
yeah.
It's about halfway between Roselia and Sprague. So it's south of Cheney and a little bit east of Sprague. It's out in the middle of nowhere. And the thing on the pole in the background is actually a combine. They've got a combine on a pole back there too. So
Yeah, just, I think the white in the background, those little spots, just.
oh yeah,
really
no,
kind of
I appreciate it.
competed with
For sure. I appreciate your critique. Yeah. This was a really challenging topic for me because there's only so much you can do with a drone when it comes to, shallow depth of field, right? So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tim, what was the title of that photograph?
Of the cat or the other one?
The home.
The other one, the home.
Oh, it was Mullen Road Homestead.
Thank you.
It was right on the Mullen Road or Mullen Trail area down there.
Thank you.
So the deadline is for getting your uploads for print is next Wednesday. The prints need to be delivered by Friday, the 11th.
Okay.
And I'll send a note out. Well, actually, Dorothy will send out a note since her email seems to come through better than mine.
Well, good night, all. Thanks for putting up with
Thank you.
Good night, Roger.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you for your help, Sharon.
Yeah, for what it was worth.
Hey,
Well, I
you
thought
did
everything
great.
you were-
You did great.
Good night.
Everyone has problems with it. So good night. Good night, Judy.
Night.